Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to POV Shorts Filmmaker Spotlight. I'm Tiffany Schoen, filmmaker and moderator for today's conversation. So, short films have a unique ability to capture fleeting, intimate moments and turn them into lasting stories about who we are and how we connect. So, today we'll hear from filmmakers behind two powerful POV shorts from season 8, Your Opinion Please and Chasing Time, as we explore themes of democracy, memory, and the passage of time. We'll also talk about how these artists use short film storytelling to reflect on belonging, participation, and the meaning of community in today's world. All right, so before we dive into the conversation, it'd be great if we could take a look at some of the clips. If you haven't seen the films, I encourage all of you to go and watch the films after this conversation, as I'm sure it'll inspire you all to do so. So let's roll the clips.
In this project, there's this great mystery of time. I had photographed glaciers for 30 years. But it wasn't until I was here in 2005 that I first understood that you could stand at the terminus of a glacier and you could see time right there in that ice. You could feel the death of the glacier. That's when I realized, oh my God, you can make a picture of that. You can actually put a frame around that and say something that would grab the human heart. Long after these landscapes have vanished, long after everybody.
In order for us to continue using the Pledge of Allegiance, we need to change or delete any reference to God. For example, we could say one nation under many deities as opposed to one nation under God. That way it would reflect our many different diverse beliefs and our many different cultures, but still say that we are united.
Wouldn't that just offend everybody?
Offend everybody?
Under many deities? Because everybody believes that their own God is the one true, don't they?
Oh, well, that's true. That's true. Well, then maybe what we do is just get. I was trying to do this so that everybody would be, happy, but maybe, I never thought of it that way.
We could choose Jefferson's words and say under one God or no God.
Well, that's true. That might work too. In order.
All right, everybody. So let me please introduce to you our panelists for today. We have Marshall Granger, the director of Your Opinion Please. Marshall is a Los Angeles-based editor and filmmaker from Montana. He co-produced and edited the feature We Burn Like This, which premiered at the Santa Barbara and Deauville Film Festival, and edited Aporia, released nationwide and now streaming on Hulu. His documentary short, Your Opinion Please, which he directed, produced, and edited, debuted at the 2025 Big Sky Documentary Film Festival and was acquired by POV for broadcast on PBS. Marshall's editing spans documentaries, music videos, branded content, and work for organizations including Film Independent and the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. He served as assistant editor on Roy Kennedy's HBO series, The Synanon. He is an AFI editing alum and a member of the Motion Picture Editors Guild Local 700. Hello, Marshall. Next, we have Sarah Keough. Sarah Keough is a Cambodian-American director and producer from Seattle, Washington, passionate about telling human-centered stories that inspire empathy and action. She co-directed the climate short Chasing Time with Emmy-winning filmmaker Jeff Orlowski Yang, which premiered at Hot Docs. Sarah is also an associate producer at Exposure Labs, the studio behind The Social Dilemma, Chasing Coral, and Chasing Ice, where she helps develop and share stories addressing societal challenges and inspiring collective solutions. Hello, Sarah. And we have Jeff Orlowski Yang. Jeff Orlowski is the founder and president of Exposure Labs, a film and impact studio that uses storytelling to drive social change. He directed The Social Dilemma in 2020, which premiered at Sundance, earned 7 Emmy nominations, winning 2, and was viewed by 38 million households in its first month on Netflix. That's incredible. He also directed the award-winning environmental documentary Chasing Coral in 2017 and Chasing Ice 2012, and co-directed the climate short Chasing Time 2025, as you guys have seen, which world premiere at Hot Docs. His work spans VR 360 films and supporting other filmmakers as an executive producer and mentor. A 2017 a 2017 UN Champion of the Earth honoree, he serves on the board of Green 2.0 and Netflix Sustainability Advisory Group. Wow, I've got some really talented, amazing filmmakers with me, everybody, and it's such an honor to share the space with you all today. So thank you so much for sharing your incredible films with us, and thank you for everybody watching out there in the ether. We can't see you, but we know you're out there. Are we all muted? Yeah, no, Mark.
Thanks so much, Tiffany, for such glowing intros for all of us. And I think on behalf of all of us, we're all just really, really thrilled to have our projects, being distributed and released with POV and PBS.
Yeah.
Thank you, American Documentary, for hosting this event and for supporting filmmakers like us and getting these really important stories out there. For all those watching, please support public broadcasting and your local PBS stations.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is amazing.
Great a reminder, Sarah, during these times right now, how important platforms like these are, and that we can have these types of conversations. Especially during such interesting, divisive times in our industry as well. So I wanted to start, I really like having more conversations versus just like standard interviews. So if any of the questions that I'm asking one of you or each of you, if you want to jump in at any time, I don't find that rude. I find that interesting and exciting to have, some.
Be careful what you wish for.
I'm excited for those out there. I'm sure
Exactly.
you probably like a fun debate, but also just like things that inspire us during these moments and discussions. I know I certainly do. So I'll start off with you, Marshall. Your opinion, please, weaves together hundreds of radio call-ins from across Montana to create a collective portrait of civic life at the turn of the millennium. What inspired you to revisit these recordings, and what did you discover about how people express identity, belief, and belonging through this public dialogue?
First of all, thank you so much for moderating this and for being here today. It's great to be here with you two as well. This project began in a very personal place. This show, Your Opinion Please, was hosted by my father, who was the general manager of KEMC, Yellowstone Public Radio, for many years throughout my childhood. So this show was kind of his not pet project, but just like a very important thing that he kind of jump started for Montana listeners. And I just, a high school teacher of mine was a really avid archiver of radio stuff. And when I graduated, he handed me a CD-ROM that was just full of episodes of my dad's show, which was really kind. And I didn't really have a sense of what to do with that. And at the time, the show had maybe just ended, so it wasn't, that special to me. But flash forward much later, and watching different documentaries and also kind of reflecting on the way that social media and the internet had really grown and changed the way that we share our views on the world. It seemed like an interesting thing to start listening to the show and really see what it was all about, because I was very, it was very in the background of my childhood, not something I was really tuning into. And even though it's radio show, I felt really compelled that it could make a film somehow. I felt really, really sure that it didn't mean, going back and sitting down with my dad or with his co-host, Ken Siebert, to interview them about it. I just felt like finding a way to just give people the experience that I was getting by walking around my neighborhood and listening to this show 10, 15 years removed from when it was on air, and literally looking around me at the time at Montana, like taking in the difference of Montana today and Montana of 20 years ago. It just felt like something about that experience could be universal in some way, and could be really interesting to recreate for people. So that's the genesis of that.
So as universal as a lot of the themes that are discussed, I found it so personal and so intimate. And, as someone who loved watching Yellowstone when it came out, you see like a big Hollywood produced studio show. But for me, this was like actually my very first time really feeling like I got to know Montana and the
Mm.
people that live there, and also your father and Ken. Like the responses showed so much of their personality and generosity and grace that they showed people. And again, as I keep talking about, we're living in such divisive times. There's just something so human about the way that they connected with them. I wanted to ask you a little bit, like the film juxtaposes these archival voices with imagery of present day Montana and creating, conversation between eras. How did you approach blending kind of the sound and image to reflect the changes? Because I mean, the landscapes are so beautiful, and I'm sure you probably have so much footage that you had to choose from. I said it to you guys earlier, like I think making shorts are kind of hardest feat because you have to be so selective, really, really selective. And I noticed in the credits, I believe it's your brother who is the cinematographer. So that's also, I'm sure, another, layer of challenge, but also incredible collaboration too to make those choices, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely doubled down on making this a sort of special sentimental project for myself by going through this whole experience of listening through all this radio that my dad produced, and then turning to my brother and saying, like, let's just take 2.5 weeks and drive around Montana without a huge plan. Like I didn't know which clips from the show I was going to be really committing to for the film. I knew there were some that I certainly hoped could work, but I
You just kind of
not.
went, oh wow.
Yeah, my shot list essentially was like, we're gonna go to these towns that would have heard the show, because Montana's big enough that there are two separate public radio stations and separate sides of the state. So our parameters are basically like, we have to film in places that would have heard the show, and here are some maybe iconic locations in these places, but like I don't know what we're going to use, and I think I know the sort of overall tone of this thing, but I don't really know much more than that. So, and it's interesting because I knew that we were, we were shooting in 2024, so we're shooting present day Montana, but I also didn't want to go out of our way to show things about Montana that were clearly different. In some ways, the my dad has a key sort of line in the film about the issues never changing, and I kind of wanted that to be the feeling in looking at Montana too. Yes, you're hearing opinions from the past, but there are also things that, if you didn't have context for what you were listening to, are more or less the same things you could be saying now. And I kind of wanted the Montana on screen to reflect that as well, because I think it does. I mean, there are a lot of sort of flashier images of things that sort of give it a more cynical maybe approach of like, here's this development, or here's this thing that's no longer what it was. But I think by and large, like, it is still the place that I grew up and loved, and that many people love. And it's been so nice to hear, either from people like yourself who haven't had much experience with Montana.
Entry point. Um,
Yeah.
Again, something that I feel like you could be so different from the culture, and then watch this and really feel connected to the people that you're hearing from and the questions that, both some very serious topics and themes, and something, and some just very everyday, and it just, again, humanizes people.
Yeah,
It's really beautiful.
I'm happy to hear that it is both like a nice introduction to people, and it also seems to be consistently like giving all these friends of mine who no longer live there, who grew up there too, like this deep sort of longing and
Yeah.
love for the place. Like it's, I don't know, I'm happy that that's been the sort of dual response to Montana itself in the movie.
And on that, like, and I love that, in this selection of shorts, they've paired both of your films together, because Chasing Time, the landscape, the imagery, I mean, you can't help but just be in awe of what you're taking in. And it's both like Chasing Time is both like a deeply personal and visually stunning, and a meditation of time and mortality and the power of images to bear witness. So I wanted to ask you, Jeff, what inspired you to return to, I mean, to return to the, your story that you first explored in Chasing Ice, and to revisit the legacy of the Extreme Ice Survey?
Yeah, thanks, Tiffany. And just hearing you speak, Marshall, I just feel so many parallels, and just huge kudos to you and your brother and the cinematography in your film. Excuse me. But as you made a love story to Montana in some ways. I feel like Chasing Time is both a love story to a mentor and to a place. And James Baylog, this acclaimed environmental photographer, his work has covered National Geographic covers. I got to know him in 2007 or so, and we spent 5 years going and documenting time-lapse photography of glaciers, and that made it into a movie that we released in 2012 called Chasing Ice. And for years, James had just been asking, we got to go back. We got to update the story. He had actually left the time-lapse cameras at all of these locations throughout the Arctic, throughout, countless locations, 30, 40 different time-lapse cameras that were out there. And over, 10 to 15 years of that effort, it was really bearing a big load on him. And he started handing off some of the cameras and started shutting some of the cameras down and kind of wrapping that project up. And he was going out to Iceland to take down the last camera. That was his burden. And when he was sharing that with us, we kind of knew this was the time to go and document the story, and to go back out there and to witness the end and the conclusion of this 15-year-long narrative. At the time, we didn't really, it was sort of weird. Like, we didn't think we needed more stories about climate change necessarily. It was like, oh, the world knows about this. But in the making of the film and releasing it, it sort of feels like it's more important now than ever. Not to tell stories about climate change necessarily, but to give the public and to give audiences a way in emotionally, to connect to the heart of the story through humans, through emotional narratives. And for us to be able to go to a gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. Most of the movie was filmed in Iceland, and to revisit some of these same sites that we were at 15 years prior. That was kind of the heart and soul of this sort of love letter to a mentor and to a place all in one.
Can really, really tell by that direction and your approach and what you've focused on, that, both like obviously the cinematography is stunning, but also this really personal story, to James. And Sarah, I wanted to ask you, because this is a collaborative, collaborative short film project, and I believe this is also your first directorial experience as well. I want to talk a little bit about that collaboration, because I also got to see Jeff from like circa, what was that, 2007, Jeff, in that some of that.
Probably some of the archival footage. There's a lot of archival
There's a
footage
lot
for
of
our team to
archival
go
footage.
through.
And I also saw that you were also in front of the camera, which for most documentarians, we dread and hate to be in front of the camera. So, Sarah, I'd love to talk about that collaboration, because I know you also work as a producer there at the studio. So, yeah, can you share with us a little bit about that process, and how that shaped the kind of the emotional tone, and kind of particularly in connecting also climate change to the ideas of memory and loss and
Yeah.
continuity?
Well, first, I just want to say it was such a great privilege to be able to work with Jeff, and James, and the team, to be trusted to take on this co-directing role alongside Jeff with one of the greatest hands-on learning experiences of my life as a first-time director. And so my role coming into this film is really providing this fresh lens to this story that has existed, this relationship that has existed, as Jeff has said, for almost 2 decades now. And so with the first film, it really was this quest to prove that climate change is real. And this group of guys who went out in the field and set up these time lapse cameras. And to return 15 years later, we knew we needed to have a different approach to the storytelling. And so, as Jeff and I were diving deeper into the story, as Jeff was mentioning, we realized we needed to take a more personal, intimate approach to the story with James confronting his own mortality as he's facing this cancer diagnosis, and with, recognizing that the world's in a very different place as it was in 2012. And so we really wanted it to be a deeply human, personal story about the humans behind the climate movement doing this work. And so I really loved being able to witness how much Jeff has grown and changed, and how much James, all the work that he's done and his legacy through the past, couple decades. And we really wanted this story to be about the relationships of the people working in the climate movement, of how these relationships help us keep going, bearing witness to these changes, and really recognizing that this work is ongoing and it's urgent. We need climate action now. And so, as Jeff and I were talking about the visuals and the audio for the film as well, that's something we wanted to reflect, was this idea of memory, of documentation, of this ongoing legacy. And so, yeah, it truly was a collaborative effort. And so it was such a great honor to be able to work with this team and share this intimate little portrait of James Baylog.
I can't lie. When I was watching the film, I was also just very jealous of the. Okay, so back when I was a youngin filmmaker, I would chase sunrises and do the time
Oh,
lapse, right? And every country I would go to, that would be I would drag a crew or just by myself and just set up a camera and just do like old school, time lapse of a
mhm.
sunrise. And when I saw that the camera has not moved for like 15 years, when you guys went to Iceland, it was so emotional. It was just,
Right.
there was something just so beautiful about, I don't want no spoilers, but like really at the end of the day, like how this is really opening up into like a collective memory that I felt was just so powerful,
Yeah.
to kind of like pass on, to everybody, and it's not just for ourselves, the people behind the camera, to be the owners or you know the sole person, perspective. But I wanted to ask you both, because this is a shorts, POV shorts, and both of your films could have easily been features. I mean, I could have listened to the radio and all of the stories, and probably even go further into that. And also, obviously, with Chasing Time, even further with James. What? Why did you guys choose this shorter format? What was it that really crystallized? Like, this is the format we want to make this film in.
I could jump in, or do you want to go, Marshall?
Sure. I think. I think I felt like that was the. Frankly, the for holding people's attention and keeping with this like sort of format that I was really committed to doing, of just living in these long shots of landscapes. I kind of felt like that was the most realistic thing I could ask for, is a short, and just to sort of introduce people to this show that most people outside of these communities that were listening at the time, like most people don't know it exists. That was the other kind of initial reason to make this, was like have some sort of concise archive that says this
Mhm.
show existed. If you want, you can find more of it out there, to listen to. But it is an interesting question. I feel like it's come up in showing it now, that like people would listen to more of it, and there is
Well,
like the sort of real experience of listening to the show is to hear, you know a subject come up like, social security or something, and then
Yeah.
hear the different people chiming in and like countering each other, or sort of like not really arguing because it's one call after another, but like the way that issues kind of travel through the
Hmm.
show is really the way that it was, to listen to. So it would be an interesting thing to be able to actually share that in some way.
Oh, I love it. And Sarah and Jeff, what kind of
Yeah.
drew you to this format?
I mean, once again, the parallels I think are so beautiful, Marshall, around just having an archive. And I think James's intention for doing all of this was to document this is what the world looks like. This these time lapses of these glaciers is a historical record of changes happening to landscapes that very few get to go to, and even the local Icelanders, like they're not hanging out by the glaciers every day. And so the cameras can document something that we can't see with the human eye. And I think just Tiffany, what you're referencing a second ago around, the beauty of the just having a persistent camera there to document those changes. I mean, slight spoiler, but the glaciers are melting. We kind of all know that. But it's not about the. I think the point of trying to reveal this photography is not to make people feel down about glaciers melting. There is a hauntingly beautiful process unfolding in nature that is human influenced and human caused, like what we're witnessing right now. But when you see these glaciers flowing, they're moving like rivers. And Sarah and I, we've watched these hundreds of times. I don't know how many times, and you kind of still get mesmerized and entranced by them. And you see something new every time. So I think for us, the hope, we actually thought of making just like a 5-minute film just to
Mm,
make it really, really tight. But then there were more elements that we wanted to put into it, and how do we wrap it in a beautiful story? But I think it really was like, how do we keep it as short as possible and make it as available as possible for people to see, hey, look, this is what's happening to our planet. This is a testament to time. These are changes that are happening now in this decade, in this century, under human influence. And more than anything, just sort of putting a flag in the sand of like, we saw this.
right.
I think what's really great about short form content is how accessible it can be for audiences, being
Mhm.
able to reach more audiences, getting it into the classroom. It's especially useful in the classroom for teachers and students and fitting it in within a classroom period. And so really love being able to do shorts and getting more of these stories out there.
Fantastic. No, I absolutely agree. And I think it's one of the, I keep saying it's such a challenge to be able to be so decisive in what you choose. But I also think that, as you mentioned, Sarah, accessibility to stories and how to even plant the seed so the curiosity can further their own ventures into the subject matter and also other stories, that have relationships to the themes that you guys are talking about. I wanted to ask you all kind of what was that moment? Is there a moment in production that felt especially transformative or surprising for you all that deepened your connection to the story? And also on top of that, I always think that we learn the most from kind of the lessons that we take away from each project that we do. And was there either a lesson or a surprising moment that transformed, yeah, your connection to the story or even your process in telling stories? To anyone, Marshall, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess going back to the process of the actual shooting stage, I think that kind of has both of those things wrapped up in it, because to me, like going out and on this trip, basically this road trip to collect the images for this film, and not having a concrete sense of what was going to happen, was a bit daunting and um, unpredictable. But I feel like the process of like basically like picking or just stopping on the side of the road at something that's beautiful and standing still for 1 to 2 minutes, staring at it, holding like a microphone next to my brother, and just doing that over and over again for days on end, was just like really a cathartic thing to do. And also, I think, really validated the track that we were on and how this film should feel.
Mm,
So it was cool to sort of discover that, just like in the physical act of trying to capture images. And so I think my lesson is also to sort of like not shy away from kind of just letting those things happen and following the instinct, even if it's like not clear what the outcome is going to be and if it's going to work. And people might be suggesting like, no, maybe you should like do a sit down interview with somebody and kind of make this, I feel like my takeaway from that is definitely like to follow the idea that really you believe in, I guess, simply put.
I really love that, Marshall, because as a first time director, learning under Jeff and our entire team, that was something I learned was your instinct and just following the story wherever it takes you. That would probably be my greatest learning lesson. But I would say the most transformative experience for me, as Jeff was mentioning, this really was a love letter to a mentor and a place. And so hearing Jeff talk about James and the influence that he had on shaping his early worldview and career and values, and being able to go out to these locations, especially in Iceland with James, was always such an incredible thing to hear and be able to imagine myself, but we physically go out in the field with them for the first time and be up at the Isle location and doing an interview with James at the very place that the project first started was truly such a meaningful experience for me. And it was so spiritual. In the film, James talks about how being immersed in these landscapes, you feel the spiritual essence of them. And that was really the first time I truly understood what he was talking about. And to be able to hear him talk about his career and his journey and his legacy, and then for him to very vulnerably share about his cancer diagnosis and that
Mm.
journey. All of us at that point, Jeff can speak to this too, is like we were all crying at that point. It was just, it was this moment of feeling deeply connected, not just with the landscapes and nature, but also with each other. And so that was a moment where I realized that one of the most powerful aspects of storytelling is the personal, the intimate, and the relationships, and being able to show these stories on screen, I think really help people understand how connected we all are and how, we're not alone in this movement. And so hopefully when people watch the film, they see themselves reflected in James's story and, feel like they can contribute to this movement as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I was just going to piggyback off of that because, Sarah, as you're referencing, there's this one particular place that we did James's interview, and it's a place that he and I had visited so many times and had been back to so many times. And it's kind of fascinating to think about a relationship to a place that is changing. Like the rocks, even the rocks are changing, but they're relatively stable. But this glacier in particular, the Solheim Glacier in southern Iceland, like the very first times we went out there, we were walking over the glacier. And when we went back for Chasing Time, that glacier had retreated so far, and the place that we were walking was now like a big lake. It was just like a huge body of water. So it's kind of wild just to have a relationship to a huge landscape that's morphing and evolving so rapidly. But I think, Tiffany, to your question there, like one of the biggest learnings I think for me was advice that was given to us through one of our friends and mentors. And in the climate world, you often hear the phrase like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like don't burn out.
Yeah.
But the advice that was given was it's not a sprint and it's not a marathon either. It's a relay race, and you're
Mm.
part of a team, and you can run your leg and you pass the baton. And just not just thinking that, but truly feeling that and believing that, I think has given me and much of our team so much more space to not feel like we have to solve everything. Like this movie won't solve our climate crisis, but hopefully it does make a dent in it. And hopefully it can inspire another, if one kid watches the movie and is inspired to take action, that's the biggest hope we can ask for in telling a story like this, and to be part of this lineage and to be part of this team that is passing the baton further.
I love that, Jeff, because I feel like so much about filmmaking also feels that way, especially with documentary filmmaking. You can suffer. It's a little masochistic at times and do all of this work.
Yes.
But once it leaves us, it is bigger than us, I would say. It goes on to other viewers and other people and what they do and how they pass that on, how it becomes a call to action, that it does feel like, a relay race well after we're also gone as well. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a power in film that does that. Looking back on all your films and like this film, your films recently, when you look back at these recordings and these landscapes, what feels newly urgent or fragile about the stories we choose to preserve? Marshall?
Like,
Oh yes. I mean, newly fragile with my film is interesting. It's basically like right when I started like screening this at festivals was also when it became sort of topical in a different way than I had intended it to be. I mean, threats like that with CPB and all that stuff have been around and are even brought up on recordings of the show, but nothing like the sort of year we're having with public media. So the it's the urgency with this film is that this is the exact kind of programming and the exact kind of service that NPR and PBS like provide that is going to be hit by like these cuts and any sort of um, impact on funding. It's these like hyper local and regional, really valuable like services. Basically, I mean, these are like um, community services, and so yeah, I guess that's I don't know if that answers the question. I think it's really become a film that highlights that specific uh, avenue of what public broadcasting really is, and maybe what uh, that's different, than what it is talked about as being.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Marshall, when I saw your film and I saw the inscription on the text on the screen saying that the show ended in 2007, I believe,
Mhm.
I was like, why did this end? Like this is so needed, if not more urgently. Like, how do
Mhm.
we know what we as a community are thinking and feeling, and to have really rich, nuanced, in-depth dialogue about sticky issues? Like, just to your point here, like we need these stories, we need these platforms, we need the space to be able to dive in deep with the community. So I was really just hoping that your opinion, please, could come back somehow. Hmm.
Thinking in watching your film and thinking about your previous films, like yeah, like climate change is an interesting example of a topic that like the greater public awareness of I feel like kind of coincided with things like Inconvenient Truth and stuff, which also sort of like coincided with the internet blooming, and you would think that like the internet and the social media of it all would be a really huge engine in like getting everybody on board to do something about climate change, and like the sharing of opinions about it in a way that has taken off with the internet. But I don't know if it's been helpful. Like it's probably been a mix. It's probably really organized people in a great way, but I wonder if because of the way we share our views and are taking in misinformation and whatever
Yeah.
that does, like it's an interesting example of an issue that maybe
That,
has not been done a great service by by that.
that's why we made the social dilemma.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we were starting the social dilemma, we actually learned from one of our subjects, if you Google the phrase climate change is and then just let it autofill, you get completely different answers based on where you are in your profile and what it knows about you. And we just sort of did a test, and we asked like a bunch of our friends from around the world to Google that phrase, and the answers were literally as far left and right in every single flavor you could imagine, from that. And so we sort of came to the conclusion, like, because of the way our technology and our stories exist, the information ecosystem exists around us, it is hard to tackle problems like climate change. And that's where, like, all the more reason, like, we need the spaces to have conversations around, like, what do we actually want to do as a society and community, and take those offline.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, I would say now more than ever, we need art and we need storytellers. The role of a storyteller is to be connectors and weavers and help people understand that in this moment, it is particularly challenging. And as you were saying, Tiffany, we're in a very divided moment right now. And so it's really important for us to keep sharing these stories, keep elevating them, and helping people understand that they're not alone in this together. We as a society, that we have far more in common than we do that divides us. And so hopefully, with greater support of public media, keeping these stories alive, keeping the spread of information and new ideas and diverse ways of thinking alive, we can continue to solve these issues and address these issues that we're facing, and really just feel like we're in good company right now, as we are doing these festival screenings of Chasing Time. And the more that we talk to audiences, I'm definitely finding that people are just feeling the burden and weight of being bombarded by all of this information, of the news, of what's happening politically, and feeling this burnout. It's a moment where we can't, working on things like climate change, we can't, we have to hold on to that hope and motivate each other to keep going. And I think that's the role of stories like these ones. There is a fight still worth fighting for, and there is still hope, and there is a future ahead of us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I feel like, a lot of the themes that we're talking about is, a hope that we all want to instill, but also, you know, what we choose to do, what we choose to share and remember. I mean, there's such a responsibility in that. And I feel like the urgency, of course, is like we have responsibility on and the stories that we are telling, but how we get them out there and how important the platforms are more than ever to have them exist and be available and accessible to everybody. I wanted to ask you something because I feel like again I touched on it earlier just because I think for those listening, if there are filmmakers out there, either seasoned that want to do shorts or someone who's always wanted to dabble into shorts, um, I'm curious always about the things that we learn from each projects, but something that maybe this project particularly taught you about yourself that may have surprised you, or what matters to you most. Because the choices we make in investing our time into certain things also tell us a little bit of ourselves, or maybe even the projects we're looking forward to doing next. Anyone want to take a stab on that? What did you guys learn about yourselves? Or Sarah, what did you learn about Jeff?
I yeah.
Or Jeff, what did you learn about Sarah?
Sarah, you kick it off.
I definitely learned a lot from Jeff and about Jeff. It's funny seeing the old footage of him. We used to call him Baby Jeff in the edit room, seeing the old footage. But, I definitely learned a lot about myself through this process. Actually suffered from imposter syndrome through the entire thing, if I'm gonna be honest. Just being able to work with an acclaimed director like Jeff, and then working with James, and uh, being a first time director. And I think that's really common for women and people of color working in the film space, feeling that imposter syndrome. And as I worked with the two of them, they both just really helped build my confidence as a storyteller, and told me to trust my gut, and really like respected my point of view. And I really felt like I had a voice and a seat at the table to be able to make these decisions creatively alongside Jeff. And so since then, I really feel like I've formed my own voice as a filmmaker, and really have built this confidence of, hey, I have a perspective and a vision and a story to tell as well.
Thank you for sharing, Sarah. That's so important
Yeah.
to hear. Yeah, thank you.
I think that relay race line that I shared just a minute ago in a deep way. I think I feel like it hit me personally on this project around like, oh, kind of half the job is to take the baton, and then the other half of the job is to pass the baton on.
Mm,
And just for me personally, I think mentoring Sarah through these experiences was probably one of the most personally meaningful parts of all of this, because like, I mean, Sarah, to watch you grow and evolve as a filmmaker, and to like see the confidence that you have now compared to a few years ago in asserting your perspective on a story, or what have you, like that is the craft that we have to grow through as artists, and we have to figure out how do we say what we're trying to say and get out into the world. And so for me personally, I think I've received so much from my mentors, James being one of the top of the list. And so the recognition of like, how do I, not just me, but our whole team as Exposure Labs and our whole company, like how do we all kind of figuratively pass the baton and help this industry that can be a really, really tough industry to work in? How do we help others, advance their work and their missions as well? And I think that's just been one of the big teachings for me is that's just as important. And how do we kind of collectively, be a rising tide that lifts all ships?
That's beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. Marshall?
Yeah. Wow. Beautifully said, both of you. I think for me, it's, I think speaking to what something Sarah said earlier about just like the importance of the personal in storytelling and how that, can resonate into a more universal, the whole thing of it, the specificity can really be more universality. I think just I always knew that I was really proud of the fact that, I mean, both my parents worked in public radio, so I was really proud of that, and always loved that about them. And this working on this project and sort of realizing that the best way through it was to really hold on to the anchor of my sort of personal connection to all of it. Was just a really great path forward. And I think I just learned that that's a really important thing to find in the things you're working on and in the things you're creating, and that it will ultimately resonate with people in the deepest ways if it resonates with you in the deepest way, I guess. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. I know we have like 4 minutes left, but I really want you all to kind of share with us, what do you hope these films will resonate with audience? Like what conversations do you hope that they'll spark about time, democracy, or belonging? Those are big themes, but
No
yeah,
big deal.
what would you like kind of the takeaway for audiences to have when, or think about when they're watching your films?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marshall.
I mean, yeah, I think that in terms of like the real issue of public radio and public media, that like public radio itself and things like this show are essential for democracy to be in a healthy state. And I think more broadly, like the kind of conversation and idea sharing that this show promoted in people, especially on like a local level, to be talking about issues sort of with each other or asking questions, especially out into the world, genuinely wanting answers, not just to rile up each other, is the way that we actually come together and how we actually sustain our society. So I hope that people take that away and that they enjoy the movie and enjoy Montana in the way that we spoke about earlier.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
I was going to say that for part of the story of James is the fact that he didn't start off as a climate activist. He started off as a photographer. He used his craft and his art to elevate this thing that he was saying of the changing landscapes, and recognizing the power that he had to use these visuals to give attention to this issue. And so we hope that through this more personal, intimate story that we share in Chasing Time, audiences will see themselves reflected in James and understand that we all have something to contribute. We all have a unique set of skills and passions and the tool set to be able to join the movement and contribute in a way, no matter how small. Once it all adds up, and with collective action, we all are going to make a difference and are going to be able to address climate change in the coming years. And so that's really my hope, as Jeff was sharing with that relay race line, that we're all going to be a part of this relay race and then pass on the baton and really work with the idea of intergenerational collaboration.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I think over all these years working on climate stories, we've had this realization that climate change isn't actually the problem. It's like the symptom of a deeper problem. And part of that is that our whole relationship with the natural world seems to be broken. Like the way that we relate to this planet that we call home is kind of fractured. And I think with James's work and the work that we've been trying to put in these stories, it's hoping to help people fall in love with the natural world again. Like, we protect what we love. And if we can see this home that we live on through a different lens, and if we can want to protect it that much more, then humanity might have a fighting chance. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And, I just want to say thank you, Jeff, Sarah, Marshall, for such a thoughtful, inspiring discussion. We're obviously nearing the end. I think I have 1 minute to wrap this up. So I want to make sure everyone knows where to watch these incredible films. Your Opinion, Please, and Chasing Time are now streaming on pbs.org/POV and the PBS app. So be sure to follow POV, American Documentary, across social platforms for more filmmaker conversations and updates from POV Shorts. Thank you again to all of you for joining us for this incredible discussion and for taking the time to join us in hearing about these incredible films. And I'm looking forward for everyone, the conversations that these are going to spark. So thank you, everybody. And
Thank
thank
you
you
so
everyone
much.
for making this all work behind the scenes as well. Have a
Yeah.
great
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tiffany.
so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Has it ended? Okay, you are no longer live. That's so great. Thank you. It's so weird. I actually started panicking, like not knowing when. Anyhow, but this is
You did a great job,
Yeah.
Tiffany.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was feeling your just the situational tension. Yeah,
it's
great
yeah.
job.
You are such a good moderator, though, Tiffany.
Did such a great job.